In today's video, I'm going to be showing you how to work this I-Cord Edge onto any of your crochet projects. I think it gives it a really nice and clean finish. It's very squishy, very soft, very stretchy actually, as you can see here. And yeah, overall I think it's a really nice finish that's not done too much in crochet, so I think it gives your projects a very unique look. So without further ado, let's get started. Alright, so to begin, I just worked this square of single crochets using a 5mm hook and some extra worsted weight yarn that I had, but you can do this with any size hook, any size yarn. What you will need though, or I recommend having, I think you can do this edging without it, but I think it definitely helps, is a sharp object of a similar width as your crochet hook. So obviously here I'm using a knitting needle. I think even this is a 5.5mm knitting needle, so it doesn't have to be exactly the same width as my hook, for example, but something generally the same thickness. Actually, when I just did this top, so I added an I-cord edging to this top, I used a 2.75mm hook, and I just used my tapestry needle to instead of a knitting needle. So you can often thrift these for very cheap, but yeah, you'll probably need something like a knitting needle to help you along. And for the sake of this video, I'm just going to be using a contrast color, but you can definitely work the I-cord edge in the same color as whatever you are working around. But again, just for the sake of this video, I'm just going to work it with a different color. So to begin, I'm going to go ahead and make a slip knot with my contrasting color, or again, you could just use the color that's already on your hook, and I'm gonna anchor it to whatever I want to work my border around. Alright, and now to begin the cord, I'm going to go ahead and chain 4. So I've chained 4, and basically that's how many columns that my I-cord will have, and you'll see what I mean by a column in a second, but it's gonna have 4 columns. So you can make this, you can make your I-cord have 3 columns, 2 columns, 5 columns, however many you want. So however many chains you start with, that's how many columns yours will have. Today I'm gonna do 4. After this, you're gonna go ahead and insert your hook into the second chain from the hook, pull up a loop. You're going to do that for the next 2 chains as well. Yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull up a loop. So right now you should have 4 loops on your hook. Now you're going to want to anchor your I-cord to whatever you are working around. So I'm going to go ahead and insert my hook again into this first stitch of my work. So right now I should have 5 loops on my hook. And at this point, this is when you want to take whatever sharp object you're using, so most likely will be a knitting needle, and I'm just going to grab it in my left hand. So I'm right-handed, I crochet with my right hand, so I'm using my left hand. And now I'm going to transfer 4 of these loops onto my knitting needle. So try and get as comfortable as you can doing this. And there we go. I've just transferred 4 of those loops. I'm actually going to pull my hook out, and I'm going to place a stitch marker into this last loop. So this is the only time you're doing this. This is only for this row of the I-cord. And basically we're going to use this loop later to finish our I-cord off, and you'll see what I mean later on. For now, don't worry about it. Just leave your stitch marker on here. Alright, so now we're ready to begin our I-cord edge. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to transfer this first loop from my knitting needle and slip it onto my crochet hook, just like this. So now I have 1 loop on my crochet hook and 3 loops on my knitting needle. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my working yarn, and I'm actually going to chain through this loop. So I'm going to yarn over and pull up a loop. Alright, now I'm going to transfer another loop from my knitting needle onto my crochet hook, and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to yarn over and pull through this loop. Now, when I have 2 loops left on my hook, I'm going to insert my crochet hook through both of them. 1, 2, and I'm going to yarn over and pull through both of them. So now I should have 3 loops on my hook again. And now, like I mentioned before, we want to anchor our I-cord edge to our work. So I'm going to insert my hook into the next stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop. And now I should have 4 loops on my hook. Now we're going to transfer those to our knitting needle or whatever sharp object you're using. Just like this. 1, 2, 3. And you only want to transfer 3. Or if you're doing any other number of columns, transfer until you only have 1 loop left on your hook. And now we're ready to work our next row of the I-cord. So I'm going to take my working yarn and I'm going to wrap my hook over and chain 1. Now I'm going to transfer this next loop from my knitting needle onto my hook. I'm going to transfer it, and now I'm going to yarn over, pull through 1, and now that I have 2 loops left on my knitting needle, I'm going to transfer both of those onto my hook, yarn over, pull through 2, and I once again have 3 loops on my hook. Alright, let's go ahead and do it a few more times. So after I finish this row, I'm ready to work my next I-cord row. So to begin, I need to insert my hook into the next stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop so that I have 4 loops on my hook. Now I'm going to transfer them to my knitting needle. And I find that when you're transferring from your crochet hook to whatever object you're using, so for me the knitting needle, I find it easiest to work the knitting needle in the front of the loops. So in this front leg of the loops is what I mean. So I'm going to pull 1, 2, 3. So see how I pulled into that front leg of the loop? And now I'm ready to work the row again. So I'm going to yarn over, pull a loop. And now when I'm transferring from the knitting needle to the crochet hook, I find it easiest to insert the hook at the back part of the stitch. So right there. Yarn over, pull through, and I'm inserting it through the last 2, yarn over, pull through. So when you're transferring from crochet hook to knitting needle, I would recommend that you insert your knitting needle in the front of the loops, and when you're transferring from knitting needle to crochet hook, I would recommend that you insert your hook in the back of your loops. That's been the easiest method for me, and it works pretty well. And you also want to make sure that you are working quite loosely, actually. If you work too tightly, I find that it's much harder to transfer your loops from either the hook to the needle or the needle to the hook. And on top of this, when we finish off our I-cord, and I'll show you how to do that later, it also becomes a bit more difficult to finish it off if your loops are worked on too tightly. But here, I just want to work a few more rows so that it starts to take shape and you can see what it's supposed to look like. So see, I'm just transferring my loops from the hook to the needle and the needle to the hook and working more I-cord rows. Alright, so let me just finish this row off and we'll take a look at our work so far. So this is what our I-cord is looking. This is what it's looking like on the front part where we're working. Oops, sorry about that. Where we're working. And then this is what it looks like on the back side. So you see how you have these kind of loops here in the back? Don't worry about those because we're going to use those to finish off the I-cord, as I've been saying. And it's important that these are loose. So try to make sure that you are working loosely. And I definitely recognize that this takes a bit of practice. It's not a regular crochet technique, especially if you're not used to working with, something in both hands. It definitely took me a while to get used to this, but I think it's pretty fun, honestly, once you get the hang of it. and I think it makes for a really nice border. So I'm going to keep working in the round here. I'm going to work off camera until I reach the corner here, and then I'll show you how to turn the corner and work into the side of these rows. So I just finished working into this last stitch of my row, and now I'm ready to turn the corner and start working into the side of these stitches. And I chose to work a regular, just a square made of regular single crochets to show you how to work into the sides of rows. But you could definitely do this with a granny square where you'll have stitches on all four sides. But yeah, let's say you wanted to do it into the side of a row of a top or something like that. I'm going to go ahead and show you how to work into a side of a stitch. So to turn the corner, it's very simple. All you have to do is actually work however many I-cord rows that it takes you essentially to work the corner. So I just worked one I-cord row into this last stitch, but I'm actually going to work another one into this stitch. 1, 2, and remember to work somewhat loosely here so that you can transfer your loops. So I've worked one, and I think I'm going to do one more into this stitch for a total of 3 rows into that last stitch. And now I'm ready to turn the corner here. So I'm going to start working into the side of this single crochet, and I'm going to make sure to insert my hook through 2 loops here, whatever 2 loops I can get a hold of, and I'm going to go ahead and work my next row here. Alright, now I'm going to work into this space here, again making sure to go under 2 loops at all times so that my edge is nice and secure to the body of my project. And notice how I'm working pretty much only using the tip of my knitting needle. That's all you need really. Alright, so here you can see that I've rounded the corner by working those 3 I-cord rows into that last stitch. And now I can continue working along the side of my square here, always making sure to insert my hook under 2 loops of my stitch and working across. So here I'm showing you how to do this into the sides of single crochets, but let's say you wanted to do it into the side of, let's say, a double crochet or even a treble crochet, and I'm using US terms. I would probably recommend that you work 2 I-cord rows into the taller stitches. So because the single crochet is kind of one of the shorter stitches, I'm only working 1 I-cord row into the side of each stitch. But again, if you were working into the side of a double crochet or a treble crochet, I would even do maybe 2 or 3 rows per stitch, if that makes sense. Alright, so I'm going to continue working my I-cord edge off camera. This is where I'm at so far, and I still have all of this left to go. So I'm going to go ahead, finish this off camera, and then I'll show you how to finish up your I-cord edge. One thing that actually I forgot to show you that I wanted to show you very quickly is what happens when you accidentally drop a stitch. So obviously usually when we crochet we only have 1 live stitch that we're working with, but right now with the I-cord I have 3 live loops. If you want to do an I-cord with more columns, you know, you could have 4 or 5 loops on your hook, and that's always a bit scary if you accidentally drop one. So what I usually do, because I inevitably always drop a stitch or 2, is I actually undo some of my work until I get to a row where kind of all of my loops are facing this way, or facing the I-cord edge essentially. So if you look at them here, if we look at them sideways, they're all oriented kind of coming this direction, right? So then what I do is I just insert my hook into the front of each one. So starting all the way here on the right, or the back side of the I-cord, I'm going to insert my hook here, and you want to do this gently to make sure that you don't pull your yarn and undo more loops. But I insert my hook here, then I insert it into the front of the next stitch, and I insert it at the front of the next stitch. And once you've done that, you're good to go and continue working your I-cord. You know, the next step, I would have to insert my hook here and pull up a loop. But now you're ready to continue, and you're sure that the orientation of your loops is the correct one. So again, just undo your work until your loops are kind of all facing this direction towards the edge, and then just insert your hook into the front of each one of your loops, and then you can keep working. Alright, now that I've shown you how to do that, I am going to go ahead and finish the border off camera. Alright, so as you can see here, I've worked my I-cord edging all around the border of this square, and I actually have one more row left to work, but instead of working that row, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pull up a loop as if I was going to, you know, complete this row, and I'm going to actually place all of those stitches on a scrap piece of yarn here, so just kind of like on a holder, just like this. So I should have 4 loops on my holder, and I'm just going to tie this for now so that I can work into those a bit later. So if you remember at the beginning of this tutorial, I explained to you that the initial number of chains was how many columns your I-cord would have. So in my case, I chained 4, which means my I-cord should have 4 columns. If we look at the I-cord closely, we can count them. So let's see. This one where you see all of these V stitches, this is 1 column. Then again, this is my second column right here, where we see the V stitches. And if we turn it a little bit more, we see this column right here. That's my third column. So now what we're going to do is we're going to work our 4th column of our I-cord. So I'm going to go back to this place where I placed my stitch marker, and I'm actually going to remove it. So remember, this was at the beginning when we began our I-cord. And I'm going to insert my hook into this loop. Now, to work the 4th column of my I-cord, I'm going to be working with these loops here. If you see them, they're kind of on the back side of your I-cord. So I'm going to insert my hook again into that loop, and I'm going to go into this first, underneath this first loop right here, and I'm just going to yarn over and pull through my loop. Alright, I'm going to do that again. I'm going to go to this next loop right here, kind of just a horizontal bar. I'm going to go underneath it, I'm going to yarn over and pull through. And I'm just going to continue doing this. So insert my hook underneath this bar right here, hook my hook on there, and pull through. And this is why it was important to work your I-cord edging loosely. Because the tighter you work, the harder it's going to be to work this 4th column of your I-cord edge. So just reach underneath, yarn over, and pull through your loop on your hook. So this way we're finishing off our I-cord, and we're working that 4th column of our cord. If you're having difficulties finding these bars, let's say you're working, with a variegated yarn, or it's very woolly and you can't tell, I recommend just aligning your hook here with the right side of your stitch, just inserting your hook right next to the right side of your stitch, and it will always be right there, that little horizontal bar that you want to work with. So I'm aligning my hook with the right leg of this stitch here. I'm going to insert my hook underneath, and it's right there. So I'm just going to continue with my 4th column all the way around my edge until I reach the last I-cord row. So I'm going to go ahead and finish this off camera, and I'll meet back up with you when I'm done. Alright, so I'm almost done working the fourth column of my I-cord around the entire edge, and as you can see, it already looks different on both sides. It looks way more finished and polished. So I just have a couple loops left to work into here in the back, and I just wanted to show you what the last one looks like. So the last one should be connected to the row that you have, or sorry, to the stitches that you have on your scrap yarn holder. So right here you can see that this yarn is directly connected to this stitch. So once I work that last one, I'm also going to place that loop on my holder. And right now then I should have 5 loops on my holder. This one is kind of hiding there. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And now I'm ready to seam my I-cord closed. So I've cut a tail end of yarn just long enough for me to be able to seam comfortably. And at this point you definitely need your tapestry needle. And basically I'm going to be seaming this closed using the duplicate stitch. So this stitch is quite common in knitting, but not so much in crocheting. But I'll walk you through it step by step. So the first thing that you want to do is you want to identify this first row of your I-cord. So wherever you can first see the first stitch in every column, that is your first row of your I-cord. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take my tail end of yarn with my tapestry needle, and I'm going to go into this first loop here on my scrap yarn holder, and I'm going to insert it from back to front. So I'm just going to pull my loop off here, and I'm actually going to take this off the holder. So now I've pulled my loop off, and now I'm going to insert my tapestry needle into this first stitch here, and I'm going to go under both legs of this stitch. Now I'm going to reinsert my tapestry needle into this stitch, but now I'm going to go from front to back. And there I've just worked my first duplicate stitch right here. Alright, so let's do that again. We're going to move on to the next loop on our holder, and we're going to insert our tapestry needle from back to front. Once we've done that, we can take it off the holder, and now we're going to go to the first row of our I-cord, so right here, and we're going to insert our hook under both stitches, or sorry, under both legs of that stitch. And now I'm going to go back into this loop from the front and insert my needle towards the back and pull through. And there's my second duplicate stitch right here. So I'm going to continue working in this way until I have 2 loops left on my holder. Alright, so I've worked until I have 2 loops left on my holder, and much like when we were working our I-cord, how we worked those last 2 loops as one, we're going to do the same thing with these 2 loops. So we're going to go ahead and insert our tapestry needle from behind the second one all the way through the front of the first one. Can take them off the holder, and then you should only have 1 stitch left to work into, the furthest column. So I'm going to insert my hook under both legs of that stitch right here, pull my yarn through, and now I'm going to go back through the front of these 2 stitches and insert my needle here and pull through to work that last duplicate stitch. You can go ahead and kind of fluff it up or pinch it or do whatever you want to make sure that the tension is the same in all of your stitches. And there you go. Now you can go ahead and seam in your end and hide it, and you've got your I-cord edging here. Obviously this is from the square, the single crochet square, and this is from the I-cord edge. So you can just sew in your ends and you are done. Yeah, I hope this video was helpful. Sorry if it got too long. I just wanted to be very thorough and explain anything so that hopefully you don't have any problems, or that any problems you do have you can answer with this video. But yeah, I think it creates a very nice edge. I haven't really seen this done that much in the crochet world, definitely more in the knitting world, but I think it's a technique that has a lot of applications, and I think it looks really nice, especially on thinner yarns. Like I was saying before, I just recently designed a top with this edging. So this is the bottom of my top, and I did the I-cord edge, and I also did it at the top. And yeah, I think it looks very nice and clean. But yeah, I hope you liked this video, and if you have any questions, feel free to leave me a comment. I'll try to get back to you as quickly as I can. And yeah, just thank you so much for watching. Have a nice day.